I used to accept cigarettes from anyone on the street. They were my lifeline, a desperate comfort. I remember one time they literally saved me. Then one day she broke up with me. Sarah. She ghosted me, wouldn't see me. Packed my bags, returned home. No replies on WeChat. My calls were blocked. Even bank transfers were rejected. Gritting my teeth, I bought a plane ticket and chased her to Chongqing. You're listening to White Files on Tran Tien Min's YouTube channel. July in Chongqing is an inferno, like a furnace, a steaming pot. The air hung heavy, pregnant with impending rain. No sun in the sky, yet sweat poured off me in rivers. I stumbled out of the airport, drenched in sweat, not even stopping for a bottle of water. I hailed a cab straight to her place. But at the complex gate, a security guard blocked me. Sir, please understand, I'm here to see my girlfriend. Go on, go on. You're talking nonsense. Who are you trying to fool? No, really. My girlfriend's name is Sarah Tran. I even know her parents' names. They live in Building B, apartment 4203. Please believe me, let me in. During holidays, I often ordered food for her, sent packages. I knew her address by heart. The only reason I dared to show up was because I couldn't reach her. To my surprise, the guard's face darkened the moment I finished speaking. He waved me away dismissively. You're still lying. There's no one named Sarah Tran in 4203. The Wong family lives there. Their daughter just turned 20, got married over a year ago, and they don't have kids yet. The security booth door slammed shut with a resounding thud. Through the glass, I felt his disdainful gaze. But I barely registered it. The guard's words echoed in my head. Sarah doesn't live here. Did I get the address wrong? No way, she told me herself. Deliveries came here countless times without a hitch. Even the green patch in the background of her social media photos looked exactly like this complex. Social media. A sudden realization hit me. I frantically pulled out my phone, intending to compare her photos with the complex to convince the guard, hoping he'd let me search. After all, I had proof. If she really lived in 4203, she must have been seen around here. But the guard insisted I was a fraud, wouldn't even look at the photos, and threatened to call the police. Frustrated and angry, but unwilling to cause a scene, I found a curb outside and sat down. I scrolled through photos of Sarah on my phone, our chat history, unable to believe she had lied to me. Hey kid, got a cigarette? A light tap on my shoulder. I looked up to see a man in black, a baseball cap pulled low, almost obscuring his face. His thin lips gave him an unapproachable air. A hat in this heat. Isn't he uncomfortable? He looked odd and I feared trouble, so I moved away. Just asking for a cigarette, he said, a faint smile playing on his lips, his voice low. You're looking for her, aren't you? Don't bother going in. You won't find her. What's it to you? I suspected he'd seen my earlier confrontation with the guard, which made him seem even more intrusive. My voice carried a hint of annoyance. He ignored it, continuing. What if I could get you inside? My ears perked up. How? He didn't answer, simply sat on the curb beside me and gestured with his chin towards the supermarket across the street. I eyed him suspiciously. His actions were strange, but his gaze was unwavering, as if he truly had a way. Nothing to lose. I gritted my teeth, stood up, and walked into the supermarket. A pack of cigarettes wasn't expensive. Out of habit, I grabbed a lighter too. When I emerged, he was still by the roadside. Suppressing my irritation, I tossed the pack and lighter into his lap. Let's go. He picked up the lighter, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, then a hint of approval in his voice. Not bad, kid. You're smart. With that, he tore open the pack, lit a cigarette, and inhaled with an air of enjoyment. I didn't rush him, just watched him silently finish his smoke. He smoked at a steady pace, then stubbed the butt on the ground, extinguished it, and casually slipped the pack into his pocket. Only then did he stand up. Be back here at 5:30. I'll get you in. With that, He vanished into an alley in a few quick strides. I cursed under my breath. It was then I remembered I was supposed to be chasing him. But then I thought, what if he just tricked me for a pack of cigarettes? Consider it a loss. I bent down, picked up my suitcase, and put the cigarette pack inside. Standing up, my head swam. Only then did I realize my stomach was growling. I needed to find a place to rest first, then try to contact Sarah again. Even when she was lazy about texting, she never ignored me completely. But now that I was in Chongqing, she couldn't avoid me forever. With a clear plan for my next steps, I decided to find a place to stay and grab a bite. I rented a homestay not far from Sarah's complex. After showering and eating, I finally felt lighter, my mind a bit clearer. Lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling light, I suddenly recalled a detail from a conversation with Sarah. She'd mentioned this place the other day. I'd woken up late that morning and saw her message. I pulled up our chat history, which was still loading. At the time, I hadn't paid much attention, hadn't analyzed it. But now, looking back, that conversation was full of anomalies. Jessica was Sarah's best friend, also from her hometown, and they studied the same major. Their relationship was very close. I knew this for a fact. The problem was, Jessica had taken a leave of absence last year due to illness and returned home to recuperate. There was no way she could have come back to Tianjin and then gone home with Sarah. Moreover, even though Sarah always wanted to break up, she'd replied to every message within seconds. Then suddenly silence. No more responses. It was as if someone was supervising her, dictating what she could and couldn't say. A cold draft from the air conditioner made me shiver. I reread the conversation repeatedly, my unease growing. Before, I thought I'd done something wrong to anger her, but now it seemed things weren't that simple. I abruptly sat up in bed. I had to go to apartment 4203. A sudden knock on the door made me jump. It was the slightly plump landlord, a kind-faced man in his early 30s. He looked a bit apologetic. "Young man, the bathroom doorknob in your room is broken. I'm here to fix it." The bathroom door indeed had no knob, just an empty hole, clearly broken. I nodded, stepping aside. "Come in." The landlord entered, apologizing as he worked, seeming a little awkward. "Sorry for the trouble. I should have fixed it this morning, but the previous tenants were a couple, and I didn't want to inconvenience them." The atmosphere felt a bit strained. I quickly grabbed my bag and went out for a walk. The landlord thanked me profusely. Outside the homestay, I checked my watch. 5:15. I suddenly remembered my appointment with the man in the hat at 5:30 at the complex gate. Should I go? I hesitated. He'd only conned me out of a pack of cigarettes. Not much loss. But if I got tricked again, I'd feel like an idiot. Besides, at that hour, the residential complex would be busy. If he had bad intentions, he wouldn't choose such a public place. After much thought, I decided to give it a try. Nothing to lose. I walked towards the complex, heading for our meeting spot. Less than 10 minutes later, I stood at the complex gate. No familiar figure. I assumed he hadn't arrived yet and waited under a tree. Suddenly, a car pulled up beside me and honked. Before I could react, the car window slowly lowered. The driver was the man in the hat, looking nonchalant. "Get in." I didn't move. He repeated, "Get in. I'll take you into the complex." I observed the old beat-up car in front of me. It was a rented passenger car, an outdated model, not exactly trustworthy. But I still got in. He said nothing, silently driving towards the complex gate. Only when we were close did he lower the window and say, "Pretend to turn on the AC." I instinctively ducked, trying to be inconspicuous, afraid the guard would recognize me. To my surprise, the guard in the booth didn't ask anything, letting the car pass. Seeing my surprise, he explained, "Shift change. This complex changes guards at 5:30 every day. You were just unlucky to come during the day and meet that nosy one." Everything was exactly as he said. "Get in." I still didn't move. I pulled out the pack of cigarettes I'd bought earlier from my pocket. He raised an eyebrow, seemed a little surprised by the cigarettes, as if suspecting they were fake, but didn't reach for them. Instead, he asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm asking for your help." He leaned back slowly in his seat. "You kids are too curious about everything." I stared at him. After a moment of deadlock, he sat up straight. "You don't have a weapon, you're not dangerous, and you're desperate enough to look for your girlfriend. You don't look like a bad guy. Besides, getting you into the complex isn't a big deal. No weapon, not a bad guy." I averted my gaze. His words, though harsh, were true. I sighed, gently tapping the cigarette pack into his hand. "Then please take me to building 4 as well." He took the cigarettes, the lighter, started the engine. Up we go. The stairwell was stifling, making it hard to breathe. I sped up to the second floor. Stopping in front of apartment 4203, I knocked. A muffled voice came from inside. The sound of slippers dragging across the floor, moving closer. My fists clenched, my heart pounding with anxiety. A head peeked out from the door. It was a man in his early 30s, with a buzz cut, a strong build, and thick black eyebrows. Seeing me at the door, he asked suspiciously, "Who are you? Who are you looking for?" Sarah was a girl, normally living with her parents. There was no way a man this age would be in the house. The guard also said this apartment belonged to a young married couple. I only half believed that, but now that someone had answered, I had to at least ask clearly. I swallowed my pride and explained, "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm here to find my girlfriend. I've lost contact with her recently. She's not replying on WeChat, not answering her phone. I had no other choice but to come here. She gave me this address. If I'm wrong, it's probably just a misunderstanding." To my surprise, before I could finish, the man's face darkened. He cursed under his breath. "Damn girl!" Then he turned and walked back inside, leaving the door ajar and me standing bewildered in the hallway. Immediately after, shouting erupted from inside. He roughly grabbed a girl by the arm and dragged her to the door. "You've got some nerve, seducing my brother, and playing online dating games too?" The girl, disheveled and miserable, shrieked in protest. "What are you going crazy about now? What nonsense are you talking?" The man sneered, still holding her arm tightly. "You came all the way to the door and you still won't admit it." He turned, grabbed the girl's hair, forcing her to look up at me. "And you dared to give him the address. Look at him, your boyfriend. He calls you his girlfriend." Before me was a furious, resentful face. The girl's venomous glare made me jump. Only then did I react, quickly explaining, No, it's not like that. You've misunderstood. I don't know her. My girlfriend's name is Sarah Tran, not her. She broke up with me a few days before graduation and gave me this address. I think it's a mistake." The girl, her hair still clutched, gasped in pain but still retorted, "I don't know this guy." The man's anger subsided a little but quickly flared up again. "You two are really in sync. Denying it together. Do you think I'm stupid?" The girl, held tightly, began to cry. Her sobs grew louder, making my head feel like it would explode. The man continued to curse vulgarities, some in local dialect that I didn't understand. "What are you doing?" But it was my fault, I couldn't just leave. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through photos with Sarah, our chat history, even photos from her social media, showing everything to the enraged man to prove my innocence. The man was half believing, half doubting. He snatched my phone and casually let go of the girl's hair. He flipped through the photos and messages several times. Finally, he believed my explanation. He was annoyed, somewhat ashamed, and yelled, "Is this guy crazy? Why didn't you explain clearly earlier?" The girl sat on the floor, crying and screaming, "I'll divorce, okay?" I took back my phone, feeling awkward. Just as I was about to apologize, with a loud bang, the door slammed shut. The closing door brought a gust of wind directly to my face, along with curses echoing from inside the apartment. "Get out!" I stood frozen in the hallway. At this moment, I completely confirmed that the address Sarah gave me was fake. Every step I took now led to doubt. As I trudged downstairs, I saw someone leaning against the door on the ground floor, a hat pulled low. It was him. Seeing me, he smirked, a half smile, half question. "Didn't find her, did you?" Though a question, his tone was a statement of certainty. My mind was a mess. I tried to recall every detail from the 4 years I knew Sarah, but I realized I couldn't distinguish what was real from what was fake. In this situation, I had no emotional energy left to care about being a stranger's amusement. I glanced at him, intending to walk past, but he blocked me. "Don't go." I turned and looked him straight in the eye, wanting to see what he was up to now. "The job isn't finished yet." "Where are you going?" He frowned. "What job?" "The AC transfer, of course." He gestured with his chin towards the car parked far away. "I got you into the complex, and now there's no one to help. If you leave, what am I supposed to do?" He spoke almost brazenly. That car was clearly a passenger car. Even if it carried 2 air conditioners, there would still be plenty of space. He was now shifting responsibility onto me, clearly just wanting to keep me here. "Calm down." Even if the address was fake, and Sarah's disappearance was strange, at least the photos were real, proving she had once been in this complex. Since that was the case, I might as well go with him and walk around the complex, see what he was really up to. Having made up my mind, I said, "Let's go." He seemed a little surprised that I agreed so quickly, but said nothing more, turning back to the car to prepare the equipment. "Oh, my name's Mark." I paused for a moment, then said, "I'm Alex." And so we drove in silence. Coincidence or not, his AC installation client was also in Building B, 2nd floor, apartment 420. I helped him carry the AC unit up. The floor wasn't high, and the weather had cooled down, so it wasn't too tiring. When we reached the door, he knocked. "Who are you?" A boy about 13 or 14, with a round, bright, very likable face, opened the door. Mark pulled his hat lower and asked, "Are your grandparents home?" "I'm Leo. You two are here to fix the AC, right?" The boy was sharp, guessing immediately upon seeing the AC box. "Grandma, 2 men are here to fix the AC." He then opened the door wide, leading us both inside. It was late afternoon, and the lights weren't on inside, so it was a bit dark. An old woman came out of the kitchen, carrying a freshly cut plate of fruit. Her hair was white, and her face was kind. "Thank you both for coming again. I took my grandson to tutoring during the day, so no one was home." Mark smiled, his face friendly. "No problem at all, just serving the people." With that, he told me to start unpacking the installation tools. Installing an AC wasn't difficult. The unit was already there. We just needed to find a spot to mount it. But this house already had an old unit, so we needed to remove it first. The old woman enthusiastically poured water and offered it to us. Mark stood on a chair, unscrewing bolts, and casually asked, "How long have you been living here, Grandma?" "Oh, about 15 years now. My husband and I used to live here, but he passed away last year. Leo's parents are too busy, so I brought him here to look after his studies." "So, you must be around 50 this year." "Oh my, I'm 60 already." The old woman quickly waved her hand. Mark chuckled. "You don't look it at all, Grandma. You look healthier than me." Elderly people are often easy to talk to, and they talk even more when they find someone willing to listen. I stood by silently, wondering if they were truly just chatting or if there was another motive. Suddenly, one of his questions made me perk up my ears. "Mrs. Davis, you've been here a long time. Do you know when the neighbors around here moved in?" The old woman's memory was quite good. She answered immediately. 4201 has been here for 7 to 8 years. As for 4203, that couple moved in most recently, about 3 years ago after they got married. So Sarah really didn't live here. Mark's expression didn't change. He still smiled. Then we must have been mistaken. Looking at the owners of 4203, we thought they'd just moved in. The old woman shook her head. "No way. They've lived here for 3 years. I remember clearly. The couple often argues late at night, making a ruckus throughout the complex. Mark chimed in. Married and already arguing. Why even get married then? Exactly. The old woman sighed and continued. But I felt something was off. Mark's words, though seemingly casual, each had a clear purpose, as if he was subtly leading the old woman to reveal information about apartment 4203. I was somewhat distracted when Mark and the old woman shifted the topic to old age, aching legs and back pain. The old woman sighed. Luckily, the complex was redeveloped and they installed an elevator. Otherwise, even on the second floor, I'd be exhausted walking around. How was the complex redeveloped? My deliveries were mistakenly sent to other sections several times, and I had to go far to pick them up. Deliveries. Because of Sarah, I was particularly sensitive to those two words. I unconsciously asked, were packages sent to the wrong place? Oh dear, it's because of the complex's redevelopment. It seemed that mentioning the inconvenience, the old woman immediately began complaining about the redevelopment. It turned out that this complex, originally called Four Seasons Garden, was a small complex. For easier management, it was later divided into 4 sections: Spring Breeze Garden, Autumn Rain Garden, Summer Flower Garden, and Winter Snow Garden. Each section not only had a different name but also a different design and layout. Therefore, apartment numbers were easily confused. Deliveries rarely came directly to the door, often being sent to a collection point within the complex for residents to pick up themselves. The old woman said that because she didn't remember to write the full address, her orders were randomly sent to other sections, and she had to travel far to retrieve them. The old woman continued, this entire Four Seasons Garden complex has a total of 4 apartment 4203s. So it wasn't certain that Sarah had lied to me. My heart pounded. I unconsciously looked up and indeed saw Mark standing there, deep in thought. The AC was installed and successfully started. Mark and I said goodbye to the old woman, each lost in our own thoughts as we left the building and got back into the car. He was more unpredictable than I had imagined. It was then that I turned to him and said, "You're not a real AC technician, are you?" Mark looked at me silently. I ignored his gaze and continued. When you opened the door and looked around, I noticed you examined the room's layout, looked closely at the corners of the walls. Your movements were very natural, not feigned. Moreover, if you knew that Four Seasons Garden was divided into 4 sections, each with its own entrance, your expression when you came out wouldn't have been so surprised. If you were really an AC technician for this complex, why wouldn't you know? I paused, seeing his face remained calm, not flustered at all, and continued. When you were talking to the old woman, you kept trying to steer the conversation back to apartment 4203. You were clearly investigating. Earlier, you inexplicably offered me a cigarette. It was obviously because you saw me arguing with the guard, heard me say 4203, and then had the idea to probe. So, who exactly are you? Mark pulled his hat lower, tilted his head, and looked at me, his voice deepening. You're smart, but you kids are too curious about everything. Seeing his change in tone, I cautiously reached for the folding stick I kept on the back seat. Who are they? Are they connected to Sarah's disappearance? Or are they private detectives? But he just glanced at me and smirked. You're overthinking it. We just started working yesterday and aren't familiar with this complex yet. If you don't believe me, come back to the company with me and see. Oh, and you still owe me a pack of cigarettes. I looked him straight in the eye, and seeing no hint of deceit on his face, I averted my gaze. This person was even harder to deal with than I had imagined. Even though 100 theories swirled in my head, faced with his composure, I couldn't help but waver. The sky gradually darkened, and the streetlights in the complex came on. I handed him the pack of cigarettes from earlier, trying to think of a way to get more information out of him. He rolled down the car window, finished his cigarette, and drove out of the complex. Where do you want to go? I'll take you. Before I could answer, I suddenly heard a scream echoing from afar. Ah! A woman's sharp shriek tore through the night, making me instantly sit up straight. I frowned. What's going on? Mark didn't answer, but he acted quickly. He spun the steering wheel, speeding the car in the direction of the sound. Chongqing is a mountain city, with winding, twisting roads. The sound came from a small alley, which had no streetlights. It was hard to see clearly. Relying on the faint light from the upper floors of residential buildings, I could vaguely make out two figures struggling. "Let me go. Isn't anyone here? If you don't let me go, I'll call the police." The woman's voice was hoarse, laced with tears. "Call what? You came here yourself. What are you pretending about? Rape." Hearing that, Mark's expression immediately changed. He turned on the car's headlights, and with lightning-fast movements, he jumped out of the car. I followed, thinking that if charging in didn't work, I'd use the folding stick for self-defense. If I could knock him out, great. But what if I accidentally killed him? To my surprise, the man, seeing someone approach, immediately pulled out a fruit knife, pressed the tip against the girl's neck, and threatened aggressively. "Who the hell are you two? Don't interfere in my business." He swayed, speaking incoherently, clearly drunk. The girl dared not speak, too terrified to utter a sound. Mark's face was stone cold. Concerned for her safety, he didn't act rashly, only saying in a low voice, "What you're doing is illegal." "Illegal, my ass. My girlfriend and I are just looking for some thrills. Get lost. Don't ruin my fun." That statement seemed to provoke the restrained girl. She trembled, her voice pleading. "I'm not his girlfriend. I don't know him. Please save me." The man raised his knife, thinking we wouldn't dare approach, and sneered, "Girls always play games. Why are you meddling in other people's business?" The girl desperately looked up, her hair disheveled from struggling, her face pale as a sheet in the car's headlights, but her features looked very familiar to me. I was momentarily stunned, then hesitantly called out a name. "Jessica." The struggling girl immediately froze, her eyes wide, trying to see who I was. But because of the backlight, she could only squint helplessly. Mark tilted his head, looking at me, his lips moving. "You know her." "Of course." Jessica was Sarah's best friend. After Sarah broke up with me due to her illness, I had gone to the airport with Jessica. I never expected to find her kidnapped in this alley. How could it be such a coincidence? I tried to stay calm, trying to connect the events, to arrange them logically to find cause and effect, but the more I thought, the more confused I became. At that moment, Jessica seemed to recognize me too. Her eyes filled with disbelief. "Alex, why are you here?" Just as I was about to answer, the man with the knife, surprised that I actually knew her, immediately realized his boyfriend-girlfriend excuse no longer held water. He cursed under his breath, pulled Jessica's arm, turned, and ran into another alley. Mark gave chase, and seeing me still standing frozen, he looked back and urged, "Hurry up and follow." Only then did I snap out of it, tightening my grip on the wooden stick, and sprinted after him. The alley was winding, filled with trash and old junk piled high, with no streetlights or moonlight, making it impossible to see. Mark and I nearly tripped several times, but luckily the man was drunk and stumbling, so he couldn't outrun us. A faint light appeared ahead, and visibility became clearer. I looked up and saw the man dragging Jessica, turning left. Not far away, a building vaguely appeared under the moonlight, old and dilapidated, its iron gate wide open, the inside pitch black. It looked like an abandoned factory. A strange thought flashed in my mind. That guy knows I know Jessica, so why is he letting me chase him? He must have been so drunk that his mind was hazy, confident he could shake us off. From the moment he turned into the alley, his destination was clearly that abandoned factory. He obviously knew his way around here. If he went inside, it was highly likely to be a complex structure, and I would be at a disadvantage. I immediately shouted a warning. "Don't let him go inside." Mark understood my intention immediately. He suddenly sped up, delivering a powerful kick to the man's shin, making him collapse and fall to the ground. Jessica, whom he had clutched by the neck, also fell, screaming in terror. Luckily, Mark reacted quickly. Before the man could get up, He pulled Jessica up and pushed her towards me. I quickly grabbed her arm, helping her stand steady. The man had no intention of surrendering, struggling wildly. "Do you believe I'll kill you? Do you believe it? I'll really kill you." The man was big and strong and drunk. His erratic movements made him even harder to subdue, compared to Mark's slender build. He clearly had the advantage in strength. Jessica could barely stand, relying entirely on my arm to stay upright. I couldn't let go of her, so I could only keep a close eye on the situation on the other side. My other hand still clutched the stick, ready to rush in and help. To my surprise, although Mark didn't have the physical advantage, he wasn't at a disadvantage in a one-on-one fight with the man. The man was held by the neck, his face pressed to the ground, gritting his teeth and cursing. "Let me go, you bastard. I'll call my brothers to kill you right now." "Shut up," Mark hissed, his other hand reaching behind the man's back, intending to untie a rope to tie his hands. But unexpectedly, the man struggled violently. The two wrestled, and he rolled into the factory gate. "Annoying," I cursed under my breath. Before I could react, I was suddenly hit hard on the back of my head. A sharp pain spread throughout my skull. Before losing consciousness, I vaguely saw a shadowy figure. At that moment, I only had time to think, that bastard has accomplices. I don't know how long it had been. I slowly regained consciousness amidst the sharp pain in my neck. Opening my eyes, all I saw was darkness. After a while, adapting to the darkness, I could finally see my surroundings clearly. The ceiling was very high, with a few translucent plastic panels installed. The windows were very far away, and faint moonlight shone through the cracks. The setting looked like an abandoned factory. A wobbly long table was placed in the corner. Wet cardboard boxes and plastic bottles were scattered everywhere. I held my breath. This was inside the factory. The iron gate that had been wide open was now tightly shut. The streetlights outside only cast a faint glow through the cracks in the door. I endured the throbbing pain in my head, propped myself up, and intended to knock on the door, but as soon as I approached, I was stopped. It was Mark. He held my raised wrist tightly, his face serious, shaking his head, lowering his voice. "Don't knock." I looked at him suspiciously. At this moment I heard voices outside. "Brother, I've locked the door. If he wakes up, he definitely won't be able to escape." "Good, that's right." I frowned. It was clear that the people outside were talking about Mark and me. A fawning voice spoke, recognizable as the man with the knife from earlier. "Luckily you came in time, brother. Otherwise, he and I would have been dragged to the police station by those two. That girl was also trying to be filial to you, brother." "That damn girl!" the other man roared, seemingly angry. "Are you still drunk? Do you want to go to the police station? Knock him out quickly and throw him back to his original spot." The man was clearly unwilling, but he didn't dare disobey his boss. "Yes, sir." The footsteps faded away. They were clearly leaving the factory. Mark leaned against the door and sat down, silently twirling his hat in his hand. He asked me, "You know that girl?" I stared at him, asking back, "Is she okay?" The man with the knife had a violent temper. Although he might not dare to go too far, if he truly harmed Jessica, she might not be able to resist. Mark looked up, his eyes sharp as knives. "Answer me first." I, who never yielded, lowered my head and remained silent. He seemed to have no other explanation. "Don't worry, I've already called the police. She'll be fine." Called the police? That's right. I should have called the police earlier. Coming to Chongqing was too sudden, and I was caught up in a series of confusing events, making me forget the simplest thing: going to the police. The pressure in my heart eased a little. I gave a bitter smile and leaned against the wall. "She's my girlfriend's best friend." Mark pondered. "You're from Tianjin, just graduated. Your girlfriend disappeared in Chongqing. You only know she lived in 4203 but don't know which section, right?" I nodded in confirmation. He asked again, So, when exactly did she disappear? Were there any unusual behaviors before she vanished? These questions were not wrong, but they made me even more suspicious. He knew too much. Clearly, when I was arguing with the guard, he was nearby, listening to everything. If he wasn't involved in Sarah's disappearance, why would he care about what I said to the guard? I remained silent. Mark then looked up, seeing me watching him with wary eyes. He didn't get angry, just put his hat back on, pulling the brim low, his expression serious. Don't misunderstand. I'm a police officer. Your girlfriend might be involved in a case we're investigating. I hope you'll cooperate and help me clarify things. Police officer. No wonder he always observed carefully, spoke systematically, skillfully guided information, and always remained calm. Furthermore, he just dared to say directly that he had called the police, proving he wasn't afraid of being investigated. If Sarah was truly in trouble, police intervention might be the only chance to find the truth. I took a breath and asked, "May I ask you something? What case are you investigating?" Mark looked deep into my eyes, as if weighing something. After a moment he said, "A case of inciting suicide." Inciting suicide. In this era of developed internet and transparent information, this concept isn't new, but this is the first time I've actually heard of it. The victim was a 12th grade student who committed suicide right before the college entrance exam. The investigation revealed that the victim had been part of an anti-depression chat group. The chat history contained numerous messages that incited suicide. The case had been transferred to criminal investigation. It made sense now why Mark had been lingering around the residential complex, pretending to fix air conditioners to gather information about apartment 4203. It was all for the investigation. It seemed he only knew the complex name and apartment number. The fact that there were 4 separate 4203 units genuinely surprised him. I tried to piece together the information in my head and asked, "The suicide happened in Chongqing, so how are you sure the suspect lives at 4203? Mark didn't let his guard down. "I cannot disclose specific details related to the case's information. To protect the victim and their family, I won't press further," he stated. However, the more I thought about it, the more something felt off. "So, you suspect Sarah is the one who incited the suicide?" Mark didn't answer, but his silence was a clear, unspoken admission. I frowned, instinctively retorting, "No way. Sarah is kind and gentle. She couldn't do something like that." Mark's face remained impassive. "Whether she's involved or not, only an investigation will tell." I fell silent, reaching for my phone to check the time, but it wasn't there. Then I remembered I'd dropped it on the car seat in my hurry to get out. Mark had said he'd called the police, so his backup would surely arrive. But I didn't know when. "What time is it?" "Yes." He handed me his phone, telling me to check for myself. It was 12:10 a.m., still early. I casually tapped on the call log, but before I could properly see it, the screen instantly turned off. Before it completely darkened, I caught a strange detail. The most recent call was at 3:48 p.m. Froze. There had been no call. So how did he report it to the police? If he hadn't called, why lie to me? If he wasn't a police officer, then who was he? I stared at him, my mind a whirl of anger and suspicion. Suppressing my emotions, I pretended to be calm and returned the phone. But just as he reached out to take it, I moved swiftly, twisting his arm and pinning him against the wall. We were roughly the same build. A direct confrontation might not guarantee my victory, but my sneak attack was effective. He was stunned, asking, "What are you doing? Who are you? Who are you really?" He straightened his face. "I told you I'm a police officer. Are you assaulting a police officer? Still putting on a good act, aren't you? You say you're a police officer, and I'm supposed to believe it. Where's your proof?" He froze for a moment, as if exposed, a hint of confusion in his eyes. "Let me go, I'll show you proof." Still defiant, I gave a cold laugh. "Proof? I'll get it myself." He tensed his back, guarding himself. After a moment he said, My right pants pocket, my ID is in there. Seeing him speak with such certainty, I momentarily doubted if he truly had an ID card. I stared at his right jeans pocket, hesitating slightly. But if I didn't check, how would I know if he was telling the truth or lying? I gritted my teeth and reached in. Before I could touch anything, crash. The iron door burst open. I hadn't even reacted when a powerful flashlight beam shone directly on me, blinding me, then stopped just in time. My hand was still in Mark's pants pocket. From the doorway, an awkward voice echoed. What's going on here? What are you two doing? The situation was so bizarre that I immediately pulled my hand back, forgetting all about questioning Mark. What's the situation here? Mark regained his composure first, calmly replying, My situation? She's Officer Jane, my partner investigating the suicide incitement case. Since we couldn't rule out your suspicion, she didn't reveal her identity, and I didn't report to the police yet. She's always been with me, which is why we were able to prevent what happened to that girl. Do you understand now? Mark spoke, rubbing the arm I had pinned against the wall. With his other hand, he pulled out an ID card and handed it to me, smiling playfully. This is my real ID. I didn't expect you, who don't look like the brawling type, to have such a fierce hand. The flashlight beam shifted, and only then could I clearly see the person standing at the door. She was tall and slender, wearing an oversized t-shirt and black and white plaid pants. Her face was hard to make out in the dim light. Her name was Jane. Her first name was Jane, strangely calm. She didn't seem gentle at all. Mark asked again as he took the flashlight. How's the victim? Jane replied. She's fine, just too frightened and passed out. She's resting in the car. Honestly, you're useless. You handled just one drunk guy and still needed my help. Let's switch roles, I'll be the captain. Mark walked out replying, Don't call me captain, it sounds like you're calling a gangster boss. That guy weighed over 200 pounds. If you wanted to fight, I would have let you. Knocked him out with a stick, tied him up, and tossed him in the trunk, she added. Jane suddenly remembered something, took a few steps back and handed me an item. Oh, are you Alex? Here's your phone. I observed the girl in front of me. Decisive movements, hair even shorter than mine. Still, I politely took my phone back. Thanks. Don't mention it. Consider yourself unlucky. Heartbreak wasn't enough. Your girlfriend is now suspected of inciting murder. She glanced at me, her voice soft as if comforting. But at least you're alive. That's fortunate. Thanks, I really am lucky. Mark had already opened the car trunk, checking the situation inside. The drunk man was still unconscious, hands and feet bound, showing no signs of movement. In the front passenger seat, Jessica sat slumped, silent. After confirming everything, Mark got into the driver's seat. Let's go to the station. What about him? Jane pointed at me. Bring him along too. Looking out the car window, it was almost midnight, but downtown Chongqing was still bustling. Brilliant advertising lights, people dressed in all sorts of styles. The scene was no different from a lively corner of Tianjin. For a fleeting moment, I felt like I was dreaming. Only the packed hot pot restaurants gave Chongqing a touch of reality in the middle of the night. No one spoke on the way, and we quickly arrived at the police station. Inside it was quiet, most of the seats empty. On a bench near the door, a homeless old man slept, his clothes tattered. Apart from a desk sergeant who nodded to Mark, no one else paid attention. Mark and I carried the drunk man in. The entrance was a bit steep. He remained unconscious and still, but as soon as we laid him on the flat floor, he immediately woke up. He instantly cursed. Damn you! Seeing the person in front of him wearing a police uniform, he choked and then immediately forced a fawning smile. Oh, officer, why trouble yourselves? It's a misunderstanding, just a misunderstanding. He jabbered endlessly, but no one paid him any mind. Jane held a cup of hot water, gently patted Jessica's back, and softly woke her. Sister, how are you? I sat anxiously beside her. Since Sarah left Tianjin with Jessica, she surely knew something. As long as she cooperated, I was sure I'd find Sarah. After a few minutes, Jessica's eyelids finally fluttered, then slowly opened. I was immediately delighted. "Sister, are you okay?" Jane asked. Jessica's face was hazy. She gently shook her head as if trying to clear her mind. "I'm fine." Jane knew I had something to ask and skillfully made way. "You talked to her. Jessica, do you remember me?" She nodded. "Then do you know where Sarah is?" Her face immediately showed panic. "Me? How would I know? She's your girlfriend. Why are you asking me? She left Tianjin with you." Jessica glared at me, her voice cold. "Talking nonsense. I've never been back to Tianjin." I frowned, unsure what she was hiding, but Sarah frequently lied. Before I could finish, Jessica sprang up, her voice suddenly soaring. "What do you mean? Are you saying I'm lying? Based on what do you believe, Sarah? Is everything she says true? And everything I say is false? Alex, do you think I'm stupid?" Her chest heaved violently, her eyes red, her emotions clearly out of control. Jane quickly pushed me aside, gently comforting. "Calm down, sister." Mark stood nearby, his face serious, shaking his head slightly at me, mouthing, "Don't provoke her." Thanks to Jane's persuasion, Jessica seemed to calm down and sat back down. I stood not far away, frowning and intently observing her, hoping to find any clues from her abnormal reaction. Jane took out her notebook and began to formally question Jessica about the incident. "Your name is Jessica Gao. We need to understand the situation clearly. On your way here, a man suddenly rushed out and behaved inappropriately, correct?" Jessica didn't answer, her face showing embarrassment. She occasionally glanced towards the man sitting there. He had been complaining non-stop about being wronged since he entered the station, yelling about back pain and a stiff neck. Jane, worried Jessica might fear retaliation, gently comforted her. "It's okay, Ms. Gao, we will ensure your safety. Once the investigation concludes that there was inappropriate behavior, and it was that severe, as long as you cooperate, we can absolutely file criminal charges." Charges? Jail time? What nonsense! The man, who had been feigning unconsciousness, immediately became agitated and screamed when he heard the words, "jail time." She clearly came to me herself. "She looks decent, but it turns out she's a prostitute and she wants to put me in jail? No way." His words were extremely insulting. Jessica's eyes turned red. Jane clenched her fist, almost lunging to slap him. Mark raised his hand to stop her, then delivered a kick to the man's buttock, warning coldly, "Where do you think you are? Do you want to die?" But the man still wasn't quiet. His bound hands and feet struggled, rolling on the chair. "Officers, I've been wronged. I drank, yes, but I wouldn't dare do something like that in the middle of the street. She was the one who approached me first." Mark frowned, knelt down, and questioned him. "Then why did you drag her into the abandoned factory? Is that not daring?" The man grimaced miserably. "How was I supposed to know you were police officers? I was scared. Besides, I wasn't going to do anything. I just pulled her in to rest a bit. I still have to clean up trash there tomorrow morning." His words sounded very fake. Mark glanced at Jane, signaling her. She hesitated for a moment but still turned to ask Jessica, "Ms. Gao, is what he's saying true? Did you really approach him first?" Jessica immediately denied it, her eyes flashing with anger and fear. I didn't. He's a pervert and drunk. Why do you believe him? Did you see what he did? How do you know he didn't do anything to me?" After saying that, she looked at me, her gaze complex. Jane ignored that look, just continued softly. "We did see, but we weren't directly involved, so we have to ask again according to procedure." A thought flashed in my mind, and I immediately said, "You need to check the security cameras." There was a small supermarket outside the alley. I distinctly remembered a camera installed above its door, a cheap one, but with night vision. The small supermarket had installed it themselves. I had noticed it and remembered it clearly. Jane's eyes lit up. If there's camera footage, that would be great. It can be used as evidence. I immediately pointed out the camera's location. Although the angle didn't point directly into the alley, where Jessica had cried for help was right within the camera's field of view. However, after I mentioned this, the reactions of the two involved parties were completely opposite to what I expected. The man acted as if he'd been wronged, pleading, "Officers, please go check quickly. I truly haven't said a single false word." But Jessica's face immediately changed, her voice cold. "This doesn't need to be investigated. I have things to do. I don't want to waste my time with you. It's clear who's feeling guilty now." Jessica refused to press charges and quickly walked out. Before leaving, she turned back and glared fiercely at me. I was completely stunned that things had turned this way, standing there dumbfounded. Jane, as if accustomed to it, sighed softly and closed her notebook. Mark bent down and untied the ropes binding the man. As soon as he was free, the man plopped onto the chair, crossing his legs and feigning dignity. "Officers, you're wrong about this. You owe me an explanation." Mark didn't even look up. "Explanation? Do you know how many years you get for unlawful detention?" Hearing that, the man immediately quieted down and sneakily slipped away. The desk sergeant came over to help clean up the ropes. "Done. Captain and Officer Jane, you've worked hard. You two should go rest." Jane stretched and patted her shoulder, complaining, "Captain, I'm tired and hungry after working till midnight." Mark smiled. "What do you want to eat?" "My treat." Then he turned to me. "You haven't eaten either, have you? Let's go now." I nodded, walking and asking, "But will you really investigate this matter thoroughly?" "What matter?" "Jessica, her lying, what's true and what's false." "Are you investigating?" Mark smirked. "Investigate? Course we'll investigate, but some things in this world get more complicated the more you investigate. For now I'm hungry. Let's eat first." Although he was smiling, his eyes were somber, with no hint of joy, clearly recalling something unpleasant. Jane added, "Besides, the party involved isn't pressing charges, so we have no reason to continue. If we keep asking, it's easy to be seen as invading privacy." I nodded, asked no more questions, and got into the car with them. "All right then, I'll figure out how to find Sarah myself." In the early morning, most shops were closed. Finding a place to eat at this hour was truly difficult. Finally, after some discussion, Mark and Jane decided to take me to a famous hot pot restaurant on the outskirts, saying the taste wasn't bad and it was still open. On the way, Mark, as if remembering something, asked me, "How did you know there was a camera there? Is it a professional habit?" I majored in electromechanical engineering. I often work with electrical equipment. In my third year of college, I interned at a security equipment company that specialized in installing infrared cameras. I spent several months running around with engineers, so I'm familiar with observing sites, choosing installation locations, and drawing wiring diagrams. Jane seemed surprised. "No way. You majored in engineering. So you also understand the traffic cameras on the road." In large cities, surveillance systems are already in place, but to save costs and reduce wear and tear, installation locations are carefully chosen, not as many as people think. Jane seemed very interested in my expertise, constantly asking questions on the way. Chatting like this, we arrived at the hot pot restaurant. The restaurant wasn't too crowded, but considering the late hour, it was still quite busy. Right at the entrance, a couple's hot pot boiled furiously, covered in red chilies and Sichuan peppercorns, making my tongue tingle just by looking at it. I meticulously examined the menu, seeing only spicy options. Just looking at it made my throat burn. I asked the two of them, "Isn't there a less spicy pot?" Mark and Jane both remained silent. After a moment, as if making a difficult decision, Jane said, "Well, let's order a yuanyang pot then, a divided pot with spicy and clear broth." The hot pot was quickly brought to our table. While the broth was heating up, Mark spoke. "How did your girlfriend disappear? Are there any specific details?" This question wasn't unexpected. Mark suspected Sarah was involved in the case, so he would ask sooner or later. I put my glass down, trying to recall. The day she disappeared was graduation day. The night before, I went drinking with some basketball teammates and didn't get back until almost midnight. The last message between us was around noon the next day. I took out my phone and showed them the message exchange with Sarah. Jane leaned in to look, exclaiming in surprise, "June 15th. Yes, June 15th, what about it?" I looked at her doubtfully. Jane didn't answer immediately but looked at Mark, seeming to hesitate. Mark averted his gaze from the screen, saying in a low voice, "The day the victim jumped from the building was also June 15th. What a coincidence." I quickly recovered and asked, "Specifically, what time?" According to the body's condition, the time of death was between 12:50 p.m. and about 1:20 p.m. The body was discovered about 2 hours later. Because it was the weekend, no one was at school until the security guard checked and found the body. I lowered my head in thought. If the time of death was after 12:50 p.m., then the incitement to suicide must have happened before that, at least the day before. And during that time, Sarah was still at school with witnesses, so the possibility of her being the culprit was almost zero. I let out a sigh of relief and continued to ask, "Sir Mark, how did the case investigation proceed? How did you identify the suspect?" Mark looked at me, put down his chopsticks and replied, "Identifying the suspect involves personal searches, which are not convenient to disclose. As for the case process, Jane, show him that." Jane nodded, opened her phone, searched and showed me. On the screen was an article that looked like a media accounts post. "After the college entrance exam, life also ends. What should society do?" The article was about a 12th grade student who jumped from a building within a week of taking the exam. The writing was sharp, the emotions indignant. At the end of the article, there were even interviews with the victim's parents, their words full of sorrow, criticizing academic pressure, strongly inciting public opinion. I read it and felt something was off. This article simply stated it was a suicide due to academic pressure, completely omitting any mention of incitement. Mark saw my doubt and gave a bitter smile. Through the diary, we discovered the victim showed signs of depression and had participated in a therapy support group. The diary and chat logs showed a clear tendency towards world weariness. And the last passage before he jumped was directly quoted from that group, clearly indicating incitement to suicide. But the victim's parents want compensation, agreed to media interviews, putting pressure on the school. That article concealed many details. Indeed, if the truth were exposed, the best outcome would be to catch the culprit. But if public opinion focused on the school, compensation would be easier. I felt that this case would be difficult to investigate because the victim's family didn't want to find the truth. They only wanted to exploit the death for more gain. Mark and Jane surely understood this as well. The atmosphere at the dining table grew somber. The hot pot boiled furiously, red chili oil floating in the spicy pot, while the clear broth steamed. Mark broke the silence, picking up a slice of beef and putting it into the pot. "Try it, it's a Chongqing specialty." Jane, seeing the atmosphere lighten, smiled and said, "Order more meat. Boss, another serving of meat please." "Eating late again, are we?" The boss clearly recognized them, smiling as he brought over a free plate of watermelon. Jane sniffed, then suddenly said, "Old Fong, you're smoking in the restaurant again, aren't you?" The boss shook his head. "No way, I swore to my wife I'd never smoke." Jane just smiled, saying nothing more. The boss lowered his voice, pleading, "My little empress, I only secretly smoked half a cigarette. Don't tell my wife." Jane raised a warning hand. "That's your problem. Remember to give me a discount." I know, the boss mumbled with a bitter laugh. "I stood outside for over 10 minutes after smoking, and you still smelled it." Mark ate and comforted him. "Forget it, little Jane has a nose like a dog. It's sharper than normal people's." I couldn't help but exclaim, "She really is sensitive." Even though I was closer to the boss, I didn't smell anything. Mark chuckled. "And you were trying to sneak a cigarette earlier?" I suddenly remembered my first encounter with Mark. It seemed he deliberately sought me out for a cigarette. Turned out he also had his own motives. Thinking about the past, I remembered something important. Before the victim jumped, there was a chat with the perpetrator. And around 10 a.m., Sarah was already at the airport. Logically, her departure time would have been after that. If she was on the plane during that time, it could completely prove she wasn't involved. I voiced my thought. Mark nodded. If we can find the flight number, that would be good evidence. So, you write down Sarah's personal information. Tomorrow I'll have someone check her flight number and investigate the other 4,203 apartments on the 4th floor. If you want to come along, you can. I was already distraught because I couldn't determine which 4203 Sarah lived in, so I immediately agreed, nodding vigorously. The aroma from the hot pot made my mouth water, my stomach rumbling with hunger. I couldn't resist, dipping food into the spicy pot. The result was so hot it made my head spin. I had to drink half a glass of coconut water to calm down. Before I could even put the glass down, someone unexpectedly bumped into me hard. I reacted quickly, trying to keep the glass from spilling, but the front of my shirt still got soaked. The person who bumped into me was a young man, completely drunk, muttering about alcohol. His friend pulled him back, bowing and apologizing. Sorry. He just got cheated on and drank too much. Alex is pretty miserable. I waved my hand, indicating it was fine, and returned to my seat with the other two. As soon as I sat down, I started to feel annoyed by my wet shirt. The sticky coconut water was very uncomfortable. Seeing this, Mark stood up and said, "Let me go get something." When he returned, he carried a police uniform. "This is the only set left in the car. You can wear it for now." I went to the bathroom to change. Although it was a bit hot, it was better than the sticky feeling of a wet shirt. Although I shouldn't wear a police uniform without authorization, it was almost dawn, so probably no one would see it and misunderstand or be alarmed. I'd just return it to Mark tomorrow. After hot pot, it was past 4 a.m. Back at the homestay, I was so sleepy I could barely keep my eyes open. I forced myself to take a quick shower, then collapsed onto the bed to sleep, but forgot to turn on the air conditioner. In the middle of the night, it was so hot I was drenched in sweat. I fumbled in the dark for the remote control. As I was drifting off, I suddenly heard a faint sound in the room. Faint creak. I instantly became wide awake, a chill running down my spine. The door wasn't fully closed. A small crack remained, and the light from the hallway seeped in. Relying on that dim light, I saw a shadow moving silently in the room. A thief, an assassin, or some special service. Whatever it was, it certainly wasn't good. To avoid startling them, I tried to remain still, gently reaching for the ashtray on the bedside table. I lay on my side, my eyes fixed on the shadow, not blinking. If my eyes couldn't see clearly, my ears became even more sensitive. The rustling sounds grew closer and closer, as if searching for something. Suddenly, a light flashed in the darkness. He turned on his phone screen to use as a flashlight. I clearly saw him slowly approaching the bed, reaching for the backpack placed beside the headboard. I silently counted down 3 seconds in my head, then sprang up like lightning, raising the ashtray in my hand and striking him directly. "Ah!" A miserable scream echoed, followed by a thud as he fell to the ground. Accompanying constant groans of pain, I finally let out a sigh of relief. I got out of bed and turned on the room light. The dazzling light made me blink for a while before I could adjust. Then I clearly saw the person curled up beside the bed. A man wearing black shorts and a gray and white striped shirt, clutching his head. His face wasn't clear, but his posture seemed familiar. My backpack lay rolled beside him. He must have dropped it when he was unexpectedly hit. I was sure he was a thief, but I still had to ask clearly, "Who are you? How did you get in here?" The man seemed to want to play dumb, still clutching his head and groaning, refusing to answer. Waking up in the middle of the night, I was extremely annoyed. Losing patience, I kicked his leg threateningly. "You're a thief, aren't you? If you don't tell the truth, I'll call the police." With that, I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Don't call," he immediately shouted. The man staggered to his feet, revealing a familiar face. It was the landlord, the one I had just met that afternoon. He was short and chubby with tiny eyes. Unmistakable. His forehead was swollen from the blow, and he was still wearing the same clothes as that afternoon. Seeing that I recognized him, his face kept changing expressions. Finally, he raised his neck and gritted his teeth. "I suspected you broke something in the house, so I came to check. Is there anything wrong with that?" He gave a cold laugh. "Then why were your hands in my backpack?" He wasn't scared, he retorted. "When were my hands in there? Do you have proof? Are you trying to frame me? I'll sue you. Besides, this is my house. Even if you call the police, you can't do anything to me. It's best not to cause trouble." With that, he glared at me, his face full of arrogance. He's a professional thug indeed. I looked at him coldly, about to call Mark. To my surprise, he suddenly clutched his head and started to turn the tables. "You're not good either. You dare to inspect my house. Get out. Get out." He began to grab my belongings and throw them outside. The room was hot and sweat poured off me. My anger flared. I lunged to grab my luggage, but suddenly noticed his movements freeze. He stammered. You're a police officer?" I reflexively looked down and saw he was holding the police uniform that Mark had lent me at the Hot Pot restaurant. Seeing his face turn pale, I immediately understood. My brain whirled for a few seconds, then I decided to play along, lowering my voice. "What do you think?" He panicked, his earlier arrogance vanishing without a trace. "Officer, comrade, listen to my explanation. I was wrong. Money blinded me. Seeing you were so generous, I got greedy. My family has no food, no money left. I just want to get by." I remained silent, my eyes scanning the gold chain around his neck. The landlord's face stiffened, his pathetic tale cut short. He forced out a smile, uglier than crying. "Fake. It's all fake." I reclaimed my backpack and luggage, put them back on the bed, and turned on the air conditioner. The stuffy air partially cleared. I calmed down, sat on the bed, and asked him, "Where did you get the idea that I'm lavish?" I had minimal contact with this landlord and had never done anything notable with my spending in front of him. Yet he was certain I had money. This couldn't be without reason. He stammered. "Well, it's obvious, isn't it? The room you rented here is near the tourist area, and the price is 3 times higher than nearby places. And now it's tourist season. If you don't have money, who would choose to stay here?" He then realized his words had a hint of sarcasm. He quickly forced a fawning smile. "Of course I didn't mean you. I never expected the reason to be so simple. When I booked online, I just chose a place near Sarah's house, not thinking much, never expecting to bring trouble upon myself." The landlord stood still, his tone cautious. "Please, officer comrade, don't arrest me." I hated that fawning look. I waved him away, telling him to get out. He thought I was really a police officer, scared stiff, probably wouldn't dare try anything again. Besides, the rent was already paid, and finding a new place to stay was a hassle. I might as well stay here. He visibly brightened, bowing and profusely thanking me. "Thank you, sir, truly, thank you," I said coldly. "You're lucky you ran into me this time. Next time you try something, it won't be this easy." He nodded like a pecking chicken, giving a bitter smile. "I wouldn't dare again, sir. To be honest, I've only tried this twice. The first time I ran into a crazy person who also lived nearby, renting a room like a guest. The second time, I bothered a police officer on his day off. Tell me," I stopped him. "Who was that person last time?" It was a family of 3, a girl around 20, living with her parents." The landlord began to recall. His attitude relaxed as if it had nothing to do with him. "That happened around early June. They rented the room through an app and paid for a whole week. I thought I'd hit a jackpot. Cough, a rich customer, so I planned to steal something while cleaning the room. Cough, I observed a bit. But shortly after I entered the room, the girl unexpectedly came back, as if there was a camera in the room, and beat me black and blue. Especially that girl, she looked weak but she was really fierce. And then I had to be hospitalized for a week before I felt better. My wife also kept scolding me. I frowned and cut him off. Stop rambling. I asked you what happened to that family now. After that incident I was embarrassed. I hadn't even taken anything while cleaning the room when I got beaten, so I kicked them out and refused to rent to them anymore. But then, to my surprise, that girl brought a lawsuit against me. I had no choice but to let them continue staying. But after that I was afraid she would intentionally damage the room, so I went to check every day. Then one morning I found that they had disappeared, and the rent wasn't paid either. You tell me, wasn't that crazy? Early June, a family of 3, a girl in her 20s, looked weak but was actually very strong. I instinctively clenched my fist. Sarah was an only child, returned to Chongqing on June 15th. Due to her passion, she had studied Sanzhou, Chinese kickboxing, for 5 years. I pulled out my phone, found Sarah's photo, and showed it to the landlord, silently praying that I was just overthinking, that my imagination was running wild. Before I could even open my mouth to ask, he exclaimed, "Hey, it's this girl. Officer Comrade, you know her." The landlord stared at me in surprise. I stood frozen, the answer stuck in my throat. A sudden breakup, avoidance, refusal to meet, and then meeting Jessica. Her abnormal reactions. The initial scattered suspicions suddenly linked together clearly. Could she really be running away because of a crime? Could she really have killed someone? A chilling thought suddenly emerged in my mind, making me dazed. Suddenly my phone rang. The call had no caller ID. I hesitated for a few seconds, then picked up. It was Mark. His voice was clear and crisp, nothing like someone who had just been up all night. He continued, "I have good news for you. According to the information you provided, we obtained records from the travel agency. Records show that at the time of the incident, your girlfriend was on a plane. Her phone was in airplane mode. She couldn't have committed the crime." Sarah was cleared of suspicion. Yet I still didn't feel relieved. On the contrary, the case felt increasingly complex. "Hello, can you hear me? I must have been silent for too long," Mark asked anxiously. I finally snapped out of it, my voice hoarse after a sleepless night. "I know. I want to meet you to discuss this face to face." We met during the morning rush hour. Traffic was terrible. Drivers honked incessantly throughout the journey. By the time I reached the residential complex, I was more than 20 minutes late for our meeting. Mark was leaning against a tree, his tall, long-legged figure standing out prominently. Today he wasn't wearing a hat. His buzz cut and sharp eyebrows, just standing there, exuded an aura of integrity. As I approached, I asked, "Why did you call so mysteriously? What's going on?" I threw the rolled-up police uniform in my hand to him, then stepped into the shade under the tree, recounting everything that happened last night, including the landlord recognizing Sarah's photo. After listening, Mark's expression became serious. I didn't press him, just took a sip of water and waited for him to speak. On the way here I had thought it all through. Even if these new clues increased suspicion towards Sarah, what needed to be done was a thorough investigation. If she was innocent, only an investigation could prove her innocence. And if she was truly involved, the truth and the hidden reasons were more important than covering up or denying. After a moment of contemplation, Mark asked, "Can you still contact the landlord now?" "I think so." I pulled out a pre-prepared piece of paper with the landlord's phone number and specific address written on it. I asked, "He also has 2 other apartments nearby. He lives off rental income, so he probably won't leave easily." Mark took the paper, his eyes showing a hint of appreciation. "You've worked hard." "No problem," I waved my hand. Although he scared me last night, ultimately nothing serious happened. "You arrived early." A voice came from behind me, sounding deliberately whispered, and a little strange. I turned around and saw Jane dressed unusually, wearing a white wig and a black and white floral outfit, carrying a brightly colored plastic basket. I froze, unable to resist asking, "What are you doing?" "Cosplaying as an old aunt." She glanced at me disdainfully. "You don't understand anything. This is called disguise." 3 of us answered in unison. Jane took out 2 folders and handed them to me and Mark, respectively. "This is the CCTV footage from the residential area that recorded the target. I've tracked it down and found 2 nearby supermarkets, along with street cameras and dashcam footage. All the car footage has been printed out. There's even a clear facial image of the target and a predicted route." This was indeed detailed. From a technical perspective, most cameras only store data for a limited time, making tracing difficult, so this kind of preparation was appropriate. I took the folder and flipped through it. The target was wearing a hat and a mask, well concealed, but their gestures and physique indicated a young person. At the end was a very convoluted and complex predicted route map. Jane shrugged. "No other way. He's very cautious and familiar with the area's terrain, intentionally avoiding cameras, making it difficult to trace all the recorded segments." We arrived at the airport smoothly, but unexpectedly, there was no relevant camera footage of the target inside the airport. We entered the target's descriptive features and activated the Smart Search tool, but the result was no relevant data. The plan was stuck at the very first step, and everyone was in a state of confusion. Mark frowned, expanding the search area to nearby airport vicinities, but still found nothing. I had been staring at the screen for a long time, concentrating intensely, and my eyes were blurry and dizzy. Mark told us to take turns resting, but he himself didn't leave the screen. I handed him a lunchbox and said, "Eat first." He grunted in acknowledgement but kept his eyes glued to the screen. "It's been several days. We're not short on time. Why are you so anxious?" I tried to reassure him. Pressed pause. He didn't answer, just closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. After a while he spoke. "Still remember the child from that day?" Paused, then understood what he meant. I pushed the lunchbox towards him and continued to review the camera footage from the beginning. At this time, the airport had an extremely large crowd due to the holiday season. The security check area alone made me dizzy. There were couples with small children waiting at the entrance, not checking in, just sitting there. A little girl walked alone, carrying no luggage, leaving the airport. "Strange," Mark, who was eating, said when he saw me pause at the 3 people. "There are many like that. The airport has air conditioning, so sitting at the entrance is cooler than outside and also avoids the hassle of going through security." So that was it. But this explanation suddenly made me remember something. If they only entered the airport to escape the heat, where could we track them? The airport bus station or a nearby intercity bus station? Mark answered without hesitation. I immediately recalled the map. There was indeed an intercity bus station near Chongqing Airport. So they must have left from there. No wonder we didn't see them on the airport cameras, because they never went through security. The target only created the illusion of boarding a plane to mislead us. If I hadn't coincidentally met him that day, discovering that he only went to the airport to escape the heat and wasn't actually going anywhere, I'm afraid this deception plan would have succeeded. Criminals who are good at hiding often know how to exploit every loophole, such as forms of transportation that don't require identification, like buses. After hearing my analysis, Mark took a sip of water and then ordered the technical staff to pull up the cameras at the bus station near the airport. This time it was much easier to investigate. Jane was engrossed in her notes. At 3:20 p.m. that day, the bus the target boarded departed. There were a total of 3 other people on the bus besides him, an elderly couple and a young girl. The destination was Tongleong. After finishing the evidence collection, I returned to the car. I showed no emotion, staring intently at my phone, replaying the camera footage repeatedly. In the footage, Sarah was helping the man adjust his baseball cap, a very intimate gesture. A question kept repeating in my head. Am I really being cheated on? So why am I still looking for her? Do I like being tormented? But Sarah, she shouldn't be that kind of person. Jane, sitting next to me and checking information, noticed my unstable state and gently comforted me. Maybe you saw it wrong. That person isn't your girlfriend. I can't be wrong. We've been in love for 3 years. I'd recognize her even if she turned her back on me. Or maybe she looks like someone else. Has she never told you she has an identical twin? 2 people in the dormitory building look very similar from a distance. It's hard to tell them apart. I turned my head and stared at her. Jane seemed to feel that reason was quite forced and stopped talking. When we reached Tongleong, it was already dark, with a light rain falling. As soon as I opened the car door, the humid, hot air hit my face, making it hard to breathe. Mark opened the car door and arranged the plan. Officer Zhao and I will go to the police station in downtown Tongleong. Jane, you and Alex go find accommodation first and settle in. The investigation hadn't even started, but it was clear that it would be a long fight. Tongleong was a small town, and if the suspect intentionally hid, even with the help of the local police, it would be difficult to find him quickly. I nodded in confirmation, and Jane also responded quickly. Seeing this, Mark was relieved and called Officer Zhao to get in the car and leave. Finding accommodation was not difficult. Using booking apps, we quickly reserved 2 rooms. To save money and facilitate mutual observation, we only booked 2 rooms. Jane stayed in a standard room alone, while Officer Zhao, the other person, and I stayed in a triple room with 2 bedrooms and 3 beds, which was very spacious. Since we expected to stay here for quite a while, after arranging our luggage, Jane and I decided to go to a nearby supermarket to buy some personal necessities. As the hotel owner said, the supermarket was only a few hundred meters away. A short walk, a small franchise supermarket. Jane bent her head, looking at her notepad, muttering the things she needed to buy. Vegetables, razors, body wash, drinking water, instant noodles, tissues. I walked to the entrance, got a shopping cart and followed behind her. She stood choosing body wash and I had nothing to do, so I leaned out and looked through the glass door, staring blankly at the people passing by. It was dark, and there weren't many pedestrians. At the corner of the street, a man turned, dressed normally but wearing a baseball cap. I silently wondered, why is he wearing a hat when it's so dark? Isn't he hot? But after looking closely, I suddenly felt that the hat looked strangely familiar. When the person walked under the streetlights, his facial features gradually became clear. I immediately froze. It was him, the person from the airport that day. I turned and swept several bottles of body wash from Jane's hand, saying softly, "Don't buy any more." "Why?" Jane looked confused. Before I could explain, I pulled her and ran out of the supermarket. The person was still walking leisurely ahead, not yet realizing he was being followed. Jane and I walked close to the edge of the shadows, adjusting our steps to mimic his speed, walking and comparing his posture with the video footage, confirming once again that it was indeed the target we were looking for. Jane was excited, almost unable to control herself from rushing forward to apprehend him. She whispered, "What's that guy's name? We've been looking for him endlessly, and now we meet him here. Let me call Mark." I remained calm, but a fire of anger was burning within me. I just wanted to rush forward, grab him by the collar, and ask him what his relationship was with Sarah. But for fear of alarming him, I had to restrain myself. The target walked further and further, gradually leaving the densely populated area. The streets also became more deserted. I began to worry and gently reminded Jane, "Don't follow too closely. There are fewer people on the road now. It's easy to be discovered." Jane was busy reporting to Mark and basically didn't pay attention to what I said. I saw the target walking without looking back, guessing he hadn't noticed, and secretly breathed a sigh of relief, preparing to reduce the distance, but suddenly I saw him pull out his phone and raise it as if filming. What's he filming in the evening like this? I immediately became alert. As expected, as soon as he looked at his phone screen, he sped up his steps. Clearly, he was checking if anyone was following him, and he had already discovered us. He was indeed a cautious and unpredictable person. Without further thought, I immediately sped up to chase him. We had been exposed. At the very least, I couldn't let him escape. If I let him get away, it would be like finding a needle in a haystack next time. "What is it?" Jane immediately snapped back. She quickly grasped the situation and sped up to follow with me. After all, she was also a police academy graduate, and her physical strength was clearly much stronger than mine. She quickly overtook me, actively chasing the target. The target realized someone was approaching from behind and immediately exerted himself to run faster and escape. Seeing this, Jane immediately reached out and grabbed his shirt. The man, running at high speed, was suddenly pulled back, lost his balance, and nearly fell. Jane seized the opportunity to close in, trying to subdue him. The man's struggles gradually weakened. He seemed exhausted. Jane panted, pulled out handcuffs and cuffed him. "You run fast." But under the moonlight, I suddenly saw a silver glint on his hand. "No, he has a weapon," cried out. The blade was already raised. Jane was half kneeling on the ground. Before she could react, I desperately rushed forward and pushed her away. My hand was cut, and the pain was excruciating, like my tendons were being pulled out. I retaliated, hitting his wrist hard, sending the knife flying away, hitting the wall with a clatter. I swore under my breath, "It hurts like hell." The knife had cut too deep. The pain was tearing through my flesh. My vision darkened, and hot blood began to gush out. The man, disarmed, panicked for a moment, then immediately crawled up and fled. Jane reacted a bit slowly. She was about to help me when she saw me shake my head. "Don't let him run." I was about to tell her not to worry about me and to chase him quickly. But the streetlight shone on her face. Her complexion was pale, covered in sweat, and her lips had no color. I suddenly remembered what Mark had said. She was afraid of blood. She was probably trying to endure it now to avoid fainting, but she was also on the verge of exhaustion. Seeing her drenched in sweat, I changed my words. "Sit and rest for a bit. Also, your brother's death wasn't your fault." After saying that, I gritted my teeth, ignored the wound, and rushed to block the man's path. He resisted fiercely, the pain in my hand constantly surging. I could only desperately entangle my legs with his to hold him back. It seemed he couldn't escape. He struggled even more frantically, punching and kicking wildly. I was dazed by the blows but still gritted my teeth and held on, only hoping to buy time for Mark to arrive. I didn't notice that Jane hadn't fainted yet. She sat on the ground, biting her lip until it bled, trembling as she pulled out a pill and swallowed it. After swallowing, she whispered as if chanting a mantra, "It's not my fault, I'm a forensic doctor. Dissecting corpses is not wrong." Repeating it, her eyes gradually became firm. The furious punching and kicking suddenly stopped. The body pressing on me stiffened, then fell to the ground. Jane stood nearby, still holding her hand in a downward chopping motion, as if she had just delivered a blow. She bent down worriedly, skillfully tearing off my sleeve to bandage the wound, then asked, "Are you okay? Can you still bear it? Wait a bit, I'll call 120. I shook my head. "No need. Catch him first." The knife had hit my hand, and there was a lot of blood, but it wasn't a fatal wound. The kicks earlier just looked terrible. Thankfully, they didn't hit any vital spots. But as soon as I relaxed, the pain surged again, making me gasp. Jane helped me sit steadily. She took out the handcuffs again, cuffed the man's hands and feet, and dragged him to the side of the road, tying him tightly. I held my hand and leaned against the wall, listening to her call Mark. "That's right, go straight down the road next to the supermarket, and at the end you'll see him right under the streetlight." She hung up and sat down next to me. "Thank goodness Mark is almost here. He'll take you to the hospital later." I nodded, but in reality, I wasn't in a hurry. The prolonged pain had almost numbed my nerves. Finally, I couldn't help but ask, "Why didn't you faint just now?" Jane was slightly startled but immediately gave a faint smile. "It seems Captain Mark understands you. Took my medicine." Thankfully, I had medicine with me, otherwise, that kid would have run away again. Without saying anything, she pulled out a bottle of medicine from her pocket and showed it to me. Medicine for nervous system reactions due to trauma. Since that accident, I've had to use it continuously. It's much better now. The streetlight shone on her face, her eyes clear and straightforward. I turned my face away, scratching my ear, pretending to be embarrassed, but at this moment, I realized that the criminal who was cuffed to the wall had disappeared. I looked closely. He had woken up at some point. Since he was cuffed hands and feet and couldn't run, he rolled like a log on the ground to escape. This guy was truly stubborn. I startled awake and quickly shouted, "Stop!" When he saw his plan was exposed, he struggled even harder, desperately rolling towards a nearby building. Jane was both amused and angry, running to block his path with her leg. Although she had been a police officer for many years, this was the first time she had seen this kind of escape, and she couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Still want to run? Do you think we're stupid?" He glared at her, not answering. She wasn't finished being angry and was about to scold him further, but I waved my hand. "Leave him to me. The question that has bothered me all this time must be clarified now." I squatted down, staring intently at him. "Do you know Sarah?" He was silent, but I clearly saw that when he heard the name Sarah, his pupils shifted, obviously trying to recall, indicating that he knew her. I continued to ask, "What is your relationship with her?" He still didn't speak and closed his eyes, feigning death. I gave a cold laugh, picked up the knife that had been kicked away earlier, and held it close to his throat, threatening him. The cold sensation finally made him panic. He said hoarsely, "I don't have any money. I really don't. You people are crazy. Killing people is illegal. I'll call the police." Jane and I exchanged glances. A murder suspect, and he was even threatening to call the police. His reaction was a bit unexpected, leaving me speechless. Just then, a familiar voice rang out from behind us. "Alex, what's going on?" My whole body stiffened. I couldn't believe it and turned around. Indeed, the person I had been searching for half a month was standing right in front of me, just a few steps away. It was Sarah. She suddenly looked up at me, stunned, her mouth open but unable to utter a word. "Sister, help me. They want to kill me." A desperate shout tore through the quiet space. Only the person cuffed on the ground was crying desperately. My brain, which was already struggling, now felt like it was solidified into a muddy mess. He called her sister. He was her younger brother, meaning I wasn't being cheated on. Sarah made no attempt to hide her surprise, remained silent, and didn't ask me why I was there. She lowered her head and looked at the wound on my hand. "What happened to your arm?" I struggled to regain my composure after the shock of not being cheated on, but I faced too many questions and didn't know where to start. In an unexpected moment of confusion, Jane spoke up, reminding me, "The captain is here." Dazzling car lights shone from a distance and stopped right in front of me. Mark jumped out of the passenger seat. As soon as he stepped out, he saw the scene of Sarah and me facing each other. Mark frowned and immediately asked, "What happened to your hand?" Jane answered for me, pointing to the arrested man on the ground. "He had a weapon. Alex saved him." After clarifying the situation, Mark looked at me. "To the hospital first." I shook my head. "I'm fine. Take him to the station first." Mark walked over to examine my wound, and after confirming it wasn't serious, he called Officer Zhao to lift the man into the car. The man struggled wildly, constantly screaming towards Sarah. "Sister." Hearing the call, Sarah finally came to her senses. She frantically rushed to block Mark's path. "What are you doing? Why are you arresting my brother?" "Your brother." Mark emphasized the three words, glanced at me, and then explained. "Your brother is involved in a murder case, suspected of inciting Ms. Gao Daihua to commit the crime. He needs to cooperate with the investigation." "You're talking nonsense. I didn't kill anyone. You're framing me." the cuffed person shouted. Sarah froze, not immediately refuting, but her voice faltered. No way. How could this be? Mark didn't say anything further, walked past Sarah, and put the man in the car. Her brother was arrested, and she couldn't stop it. She had to call her parents to inform them and then got into the car herself. She sat next to me, her head bowed, half her face in shadow, her expression vague and unclear. I wanted to ask her, "Why did you break up with me so suddenly? Why did you avoid me? Why are you involved in a murder case? Why did you hide the fact that you have a younger brother from me?" But next to us was the incessant cursing of the cuffed man, plus Mark in front. It wasn't convenient to talk right now. Because it had been announced beforehand, the police station had a ready interrogation room. According to regulations, I was not allowed to participate in the interrogation, so I waited outside. A female police officer saw I was injured and brought a first aid kit to help bandage it. I gritted my teeth against the pain. Sarah stood nearby, wanting to say something several times but stopped herself. When the disinfectant touched the wound, it stung. Ah! I couldn't help but take a deep breath. Sarah pursed her lips and finally spoke to the female police officer. "Let me do it. I used to bandage him." I was slightly startled, remembering the times after playing soccer when I got scraped. She was always the one who bandaged me. She bowed her head to disinfect, and after a while she said softly, "Something happened at home. My younger brother is addicted to online gambling, borrowed money everywhere, implicated many relatives, and even accumulated credit card debt." Her hand movements were gentle, and the pain eased slightly, but I didn't feel relieved at all. I asked hoarsely, "So why did you break up with me?" She didn't answer, just focused on her work, then whispered, "My parents knew I was with you and forced me to pretend to be pregnant to trick you into giving them money to pay off debts, but I couldn't bear to drag you down, so I..." A hot tear fell onto my hand. I looked up and saw her face was covered in tears. "But I never thought he would dare to kill someone." She sat up straight, silently shedding tears. I sighed, wanting to hug her, but just then Mark came out of the interrogation room, so I withdrew my hand. "How is it?" I asked. Mark's expression was serious. The time the victim was harmed coincided with the time her brother had no alibi, but he still denies killing anyone, saying he was framed. "If this continues, we might really have to release him." I frowned. "What? We finally caught him. Why do we have to release him?" Mark shook his head. "There's no other way. This case involves an online criminal network, which is very difficult to investigate. Without concrete evidence, we can't detain him for long." After saying that, he looked at Sarah, his eyes deep. "You are Chen Luan's sister, right? We need some more information from you now. We hope you will cooperate." Sarah seemed scared, unconsciously leaning towards me. I looked at Mark. "Captain Mark, it's okay. Let me go with her. If there are any details related to the case, I'll know how to cooperate." As soon as I said it, I also felt a bit hesitant. After all, this was a murder case, and I shouldn't volunteer to join. But Mark's eyes went back and forth between Sarah and me several times, and finally he nodded. "All right, then you two go in together." In the interrogation room, Jane sat upright, meticulously taking notes word for word. It was the first time I had seen her so serious. It was a bit unfamiliar. I squeezed Sarah's hand, wanting her to calm down. Mark began the interrogation in a low voice. "Full name Sarah. Between 12:50 p.m. and 1:20 p.m. on June 15th. Where were you?" "On a plane." "Where were you going?" "From Tianjin to Chongqing, departing from Binhai International Airport." "As far as we know, your school's graduation ceremony was held on the evening of June 15th. Why did you skip the graduation ceremony to return to Chongqing?" Sarah was silent for a few seconds, then softly said, "Because my parents asked me to. My younger brother owed money to loan sharks, and the creditors came to our house. They called me back to help solve it together." "So, do you know what your younger brother, Chen Luan, was doing during that time?" Sarah shook her head and said, "He usually doesn't like going out. He stays cooped up in his room all day. He was probably sleeping. Mark's voice showed no emotional fluctuation as he continued to ask. So, according to you, if you didn't know your brother was involved in the murder, why did your whole family flee to Tongleong and even rent out your house in the countryside for a cheap price? Sarah didn't answer this question immediately. I noticed the temperature of your hand is gradually decreasing. Mark's questioning voice became more pressing. Ms. Chen, please answer truthfully. Sarah bit her lip and slowly said, I was the one who suggested that the whole family leave. My brother owed money, and the loan sharks threatened to kill him. That's why we left there, so he could rent the house, pretending to live there long term. That way, if the creditors came looking, they would think they had the wrong address, and we could leave safely. I suddenly understood. So, renting out the house was to mislead the creditors, but it unintentionally caused the police to misunderstand. Mark's questions gradually became more probing, allowing Sarah to stabilize. During that time, did you notice anything unusual about your brother? Sarah frowned slightly, as if hesitating, then after a while she said, Recently, he's been very particular about his phone. Mark looked at Jane. Another phone. Did he tamper with the phone? Mark asked. Yes, he had unusual behavior. Mark nodded slightly, and Jane smiled while taking notes. Good, the important questions are done. Thank you, Ms. Chen, for your cooperation. I walked out of the interrogation room with Sarah, vaguely hearing Mark tell Jane to check Chen Luan's phone. Sarah's hand held mine and suddenly tightened. Alex, did my brother really kill someone? Her face was full of worry. I didn't know how to answer, only shaking my head. I'm not sure either. Let's just wait for the results of the investigation. Jane came out of the interrogation room and called me aside. Her face hesitant. Confirmed. Comparing the victim's profile picture and friend list, your girlfriend's brother is the culprit. He deleted his chat history, but we were able to recover some parts. I was extremely worried, not knowing how to comfort Sarah. My child, where's my child? Where did you take him? A desperate cry rang out. The police station was suddenly in chaos as an elderly couple stormed in, aggressively. I had seen their photos and recognized them as Sarah's parents. She immediately stood up, softly trying to calm them down. Mom, Dad, quiet down. This is a police station. The woman yelled. Forget about the police. Your brother's been arrested. How can you just sit there? Quickly, think of a way to save him. Mom, if Luan made a mistake, then he was arrested. How can we save him? Her mother widened her eyes at her words. I can't expect anything from you. She slammed the table and shouted. Where are the police? Explain clearly what crime my son committed. Don't bully innocent people. The commotion drew the attention of many people in the station. Jane frowned, holding the mother's arm. Ma'am, please maintain order. Order what? The woman shook her hand away. You little brat, get out of the way. Who gave you the right to meddle in my family's affairs? Jane was pushed off balance, not daring to fight back. Luckily, Mark appeared and caught her. He glared at the person in the police uniform, standing upright and exuding pressure. You are resisting arrest. Do you want to go to jail? The couple immediately quieted down. We just want to ask what crime our son committed to be arrested. Mark gave a cold laugh. He killed someone, so he has to be arrested. What? No way. Two voices of protest rang out. The evidence is clear. If you have any objections, you can file a complaint at the Internal Affairs Office or go to the Procuratorate. And do you really not know what kind of person your son is? Both of them fell silent. The silence was truly ironic after their initial aggressiveness. Sarah's mother was the first to regain her composure, stepping forward and pulling her daughter's arm. Xiaojing, your brother isn't married yet, and he doesn't have children. If he gets arrested now, the Chen family is finished. Go beg the police, take the blame for him. What are you saying, Mom? Sarah's eyes reddened. You're a girl and you're smart. Going to jail won't be as hard as it would be for a man. Your brother is still young. He's only 2 years younger than you. He's still a son no matter what. There's nothing to it, go beg them, take the blame for him. Mark frowned at this, his face full of disbelief. What nonsense are you talking about? This is the result of a police investigation. What you're saying is an insult to the law. Sarah's mother was startled by the rebuke and dared not say anything further. According to regulations, even after being arrested, a suspect is allowed to meet with family members. Chen Luan was brought out, his hands cuffed, with 2 police officers on either side, looking very disheveled. As soon as he saw his parents, he immediately cried out, "I've been wronged. I didn't kill anyone. Someone used my QQ account, and they're framing me." His parents covered their mouths, sobbing. "Son, if you borrowed money from gangsters, your parents can help you pay it back. But if you killed someone, how can your parents repay it for you with their lives?" Chen Luan tried to stand up but was pressed back down onto the chair by the police. His eyes red. "I really didn't kill anyone. Why doesn't anyone believe me?" "There's already evidence, son." His mother shook her head. Hearing this, he pulled at his hair and scratched his ears. I stood next to them, feeling something was not right. I asked Mark, and his reaction was very real. He didn't seem to be pretending. Mark shook his head, answering meaningfully. "Some people have very strong mental fortitude. Even under high pressure, they won't reveal any flaws." I nodded, pondering the meaning of his words. Because their son was involved in the case, Sarah's parents' emotions were too unstable, so they were taken home to rest first. Sarah and I left the station. Night had already fallen. Mark patted my shoulder. "See you at the Chongyu district headquarters." I nodded goodbye. We took a ride-sharing car and left the police station. My hand was clasped in hers, her palm cool, as I looked out the window. The scenery rushed by, making my heart feel even more vague. This trip to Chongqing was more stimulating than I had imagined. Sarah rested her head on my shoulder and softly said, "Can we start over?" The emotions in my heart softened, and a faint sense of luck vaguely arose. "It's okay. I don't blame you." But she stubbornly repeated again, her voice soft. "Let's be together." Earlier at the police station, Sarah's parents blamed her for not taking the blame for her brother, so the atmosphere was very tense. The 2 of them went to the hotel to rest first, planning to return to Tianjin in a few days. It had just rained and it was muggy. Being at the police station also made both of them sweat. My hand was injured, making it inconvenient to shower, so Sarah helped. I told her to shower first, and then she would help me. She turned her back to me, tying her hair into a small bun to keep it from getting wet. After all, it was late, and washing her hair would make it hard to dry. For some reason, I suddenly remembered that day when Jessica screamed that Sarah was not who I thought she was. So, what about the debts caused by Chen Luan and the part-time job at the bar? I thought for a while and finally decided to ask directly. "Honey, are you short on money?" Her hair-tying motion paused. "What are you asking? I mean, did you have a part-time job some time ago?" I believed that if she really worked part-time at a bar, she must have suffered some hardship, and I would understand her. But she turned and looked directly at me, her eyes sending a chill down my spine. Then she coldly replied, "No." I was stunned. She had never treated me like this before. Perhaps she also realized she was a bit harsh and immediately smiled brightly. "Silly, if I were short on money, I would definitely tell you. Asking like that makes it sound like you think I'm hiding something from you. It makes me sad." I laughed, stroking her head. "I didn't mean it that way." "Good then." She stood on tiptoes and lightly kissed my cheek before going into the bathroom. I sat on the sofa, recalling her state just now, and the more I thought about it, the more abnormal it seemed. Her phone was not far away. I knew her password. My heart wrestled with itself. Just then a message arrived and the screen lit up. I pretended not to see it, gritted my teeth, and picked up the phone. The password was still my birthday. There weren't many entertainment apps on the phone, And the social media software wasn't strange. It wasn't until I opened the SMS messages that a message pushed to the very bottom by 10.86 caught my attention from an unsaved, strange number. The loan has been transferred to the designated account. We have received it. That kid also has quite a bit of money. We won't lend anymore. Tell your brother not to bother us anymore. Another message. If you dare to meet me again, I'll call the police. I'm not kidding. They had indeed contacted loan sharks. I vaguely guessed something. I searched through the transaction history by date and time. And indeed, there was another message from the bank reporting a $750,000 debit. I tried to connect the events, but the conclusion was hard to believe. At least from the phone's content, Sarah had paid off Chen Luan's debt and even asked the loan sharks not to bother her brother anymore. The question was, where did the money come from? Moreover, if the debt had been paid, why did the whole family still have to run to Tongliang to hide? A vague suspicion formed in my mind, but it was so insane that I dared not confirm it. After a long hesitation, I opened QQ and selected the switch account option. The login history clearly showed another account. The profile picture was something I had seen many times. The account the culprit used to lure Chao Daihua was Chen Luan's account. What are you looking at? Sarah's gentle voice sounded from behind me. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't dare turn around. She thought of an excuse but suddenly felt a numbness at the back of my neck. Before losing consciousness, I vaguely heard her say, I really do like you, it's just a shame you're too smart. When I opened my eyes again, I was in the hospital, the strong smell of disinfectant filling my nostrils. Mark sat beside me. I don't know how long he had been there. I opened my mouth, my voice hoarse. Sarah, how is she? Mark's expression was serious as he asked in return, Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere? I didn't answer, just looked straight at him. He probably guessed what I wanted to ask. How long was she sentenced to? Mark sighed. There's no final verdict yet, but at least 10 years. The victim was not yet an adult, and the evidence is clear. She engaged in enticing and instigating behavior that led to the victim's suicide. I listened in silence as Mark recounted a long story. Sarah's parents were once smugglers and were influenced by patriarchal ideology. When she was 3 years old, facing difficult circumstances, they considered selling her, but due to strict government control and severe penalties for child trafficking, they stopped. Her life afterward was not easy. Her parents constantly beat her. When Chen Luan was born, her life became even more miserable. Her pampered younger brother was perverse and found joy in bullying others. Meanwhile, her parents would regularly vent their anger on Sarah, beating and scolding her as usual. Later, to improve her situation, Sarah learned to obey, curry favor with her brother, and do everything to gain her parents' affection. But over time, that submission and endurance severely twisted her psyche. Outwardly gentle and obedient, she was filled with hatred inside. That's why she planned her revenge. She chose a tall male student around Chen Luan's age, lured him, and then indirectly blamed her brother, taking revenge on her parents and her brother. Sarah was familiar with flight schedules, weather, and airline delays, so the flight delay that day was a perfect link in her plan. She used a secondary account that Chen Luan rarely used to contact the victim and then logged out. Afterward, she borrowed her brother's phone, claiming she needed to log back into QQ, and deleted all the chat logs. This chain of revenge was as absurd as a bad play. But the scariest thing was that she almost succeeded. Thinking of the innocent Chao Daihua, thinking of her gentle and calm face, a chill ran down my spine. But at the same time, when she was with me, she was always very gentle, rarely losing her temper. Even in unexpected situations, she was remarkably calm, almost eerily so. A flash of light went off in my head. I suddenly remembered that day at the police station. Mark had said something meaningful. Some people have very strong psychological qualities. Even under pressure, they won't reveal any flaws. Could it be? I suddenly understood and blurted out. So, you already knew that day at the police station? Mark hesitated, his voice tinged with regret. It's my fault. From a safety perspective, I shouldn't have let you leave alone with her. But there was no other way. At that time, we didn't have enough evidence to immediately arrest her. Intervening too early could have alerted the other party and spoiled the investigation. It's okay, I shook my head. You did the right thing. The atmosphere in the hospital room was silent for a long time. Mark patted my shoulder about to say something, but then just sighed. He offered me a cigarette. The two of us went to the smoking area in the hospital. I squatted in a corner, watching the flow of people, my mind blank. Unexpectedly, I saw familiar faces. It was the family of 3 who had rented a room in Sarah's house. Perhaps they were still taking their child for a checkup and had come to the hospital again. The wife went to register for the examination, while the husband watched the 2 children under a tree. The boy demanded ice cream, while the girl only dared to look, her eyes full of longing. Suddenly, the boy got angry and kicked the girl. Because the girl was thin and completely unprepared, she was kicked and fell to the ground. Next to the flower bed, a protruding stone scraped the girl's hand, but she just silently wiped away the blood, her tender face showing no hint of grievance, only a numbness unfitting for her age. Even when the sneering laughter from her brother rang out, the girl timidly forced a bewildered smile. I was slightly stunned, as if through that small figure, I saw Sarah's image again. Those who have a happy childhood will spend their entire lives healing. Those who don't have a happy childhood will spend their entire lives healing their childhood. Alfred Adler, the father of individual psychology. My name is Sarah. When I was young, I had to go to prison. Perhaps this probability is very small for normal people. I used to hate my parents very much. But on that day at the police station, when I heard my mother tell me to take the blame for Chen Luan, I still felt extremely uncomfortable. It was then that I realized something. I didn't hate them, I just felt unwilling. I put all my effort into putting Chen Luan in prison because I wanted to see how they would treat me if they didn't have a younger brother. Now I know they won't change. I still have debts and I killed someone. In the end, I still died for myself. After the college entrance exam, my family didn't give me a single penny. I didn't ask for it. I just worked part-time handing out flyers on the street, wearing a mascot costume in the scorching summer. That period was tiring but still very fulfilling. Until the next semester began, near Tet, my mother called me, not to tell me to come home for Tet or to give me money, but because Chen Luan had caused trouble, pushing a boy down the stairs. The other party was not seriously injured, but their family demanded $20,000 in compensation. They didn't have money, so they came to me. Xiaojing, think of a way. Don't ruin your brother's future. You'll get married anyway, use the wedding money to pay off the debt. Studying is useless anyway. You handle it yourself. If something happens to your brother, our whole family won't have peace. It was truly laughable. Just for Chen Luan, they could easily destroy my life. I calculated all the money I had. It was just over 5,000. I didn't cry because what good would crying do? I could only ask the coffee shop owner for 3 months' salary in advance, then borrow another 4,000 from Jessica. I struggled to gather 15,000 and sent it home. Finally, everything was peaceful. No one forced me to get married anymore. But the price was that I had no money left at all. It was then that I truly understood that when pushed to the brink, there's no room to talk about integrity or perseverance. Ultimately, is it living nobly and starving to death, or living shamefully and still breathing? Most people would choose the latter. I entered the hospitality industry. To be frank, it wasn't anything good. After all, growing up in a family where you had to find ways to please your parents just to eat, the ability to read people's minds and satisfy others was ingrained in my blood. The basic salary was low, but the tips were enormous. Many nights, I earned several times my monthly salary from the coffee shop. In that industry, there was no shortage of young, beautiful girls, but most couldn't maintain their appearance for long, gradually withering away. If you ask why, everyone has a pile of reasons. Difficult lives, poor families, forced circumstances. Even I was like that. But who lives an easy life in this world? After 2 days of hunger, borrowing money for a part-time job and still not being able to survive, Can you still maintain your conviction? Couldn't. So why bother trying? Thanks to my parents, I earned a lot as soon as I entered the profession. Over time, I became skilled, easily controlling the situation. Very quickly, my income was at the top of the group of girls in the club, to the point that the skills I honed became simple. For them, the more you show you need them, the less they care. But the more indifferent you are, the more they beg for your attention. Being overly gentle and obedient is bland. Conversely, being cold and distant, occasionally smiling, makes people feel cherished. I'm not a good person, but at least I'm smart enough. So, when I earned my first sum of money, I learned to play the piano and learned Sansho. The piano was to cope with academic competition, and Sansho was sometimes to save my life. Places like nightclubs are very deep, dirty, and grimy. Once you get involved, don't expect to get out cleanly. I wasn't too picky, nor was I afraid of getting dirty, but I wanted to live, and I knew I couldn't keep soaking myself in that foul water. So, when I met that man, I knew my opportunity had come. He was married. Before entering the private room, I had already investigated a little. I started to act. Pretending not to know anything, I fabricated a tragic story about my life. Pretending to be interested in the brilliant achievements he talked about. Following a few compliments he most wanted to hear. Pretending to be moved so he would kiss my forehead, then shedding a few tears. He gave me 100,000 yuan and a bunch of keys to an apartment near the school that he rented privately. But I wasn't stupid. I didn't believe any of it was real. Men like him aren't easily moved. He just liked the feeling of being admired, of being proven attractive, of satisfying his vanity. I didn't care. Both sides got what they needed. He didn't come often. Occasionally, he'd rush over for a quick meal with me and then leave. I continued my studies, pretending not to hear him talking on the phone on the balcony to his 5-year-old daughter. I wore a mask, discarded my dignity, ready to exchange my entire life for a normal one. Then I met him. That day at the basketball game when I had someone competing, everyone was forced to go cheer. The ball flew wildly, and one hit me in the head. When the game ended, a boy ran over, scratching his head and apologizing, saying, "If my head is okay, I'll take you to the doctor." I smiled and said, "It's okay," and he blushed to his ears and asked for my contact information. His classmates started teasing him. The boy wore a basketball jersey, had short hair, sweat drenched his forehead, youthful, bright, shining like the sun. I don't know what possessed me, but I gave him my contact. Later I learned his name was Trang Cam, the class secretary. Basketball games, the Pan Club, debate competitions, freshman welcoming night. He always participated in all activities and always invited me to cheer him on. He was always enthusiastic, optimistic, and bright. He was the embodiment of the life I had always envied. I started to want to change. I sent an anonymous letter to that man's wife, including my address and a few secretly taken photos. The photos were quite blurry, but if his wife was sensitive enough, she could recognize her husband's back. That woman arrived faster than I expected. She smashed many things in the apartment, cried and cursed, slapped me a few times, and finally threw a threat before leaving. From the moment she entered until she left, it only took 57 minutes. That man never appeared during the entire process. He only arrived the next day at noon. He looked regretful, apologizing, but his eyes showed no remorse. "You should move out. Don't contact me anymore. I'll give you 200,000. His wife was pregnant, and this time it was a boy, so his choice was obvious. I said nothing, throwing him a pregnancy test stick. His fake mask finally cracked. "You're pregnant." After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Then abort it. I'll give you 500,000. He took the card. That night, I dragged my suitcase back to the dormitory. Even that pregnancy test stick wasn't mine. It belonged to Jessica. I couldn't have a child with him, nor could I have a child with anyone else. Because I wasn't worthy. I had no right to bring a life into the world that deserved to live happily. Jessica and I weren't exactly friends. We were just the same kind of people. After cutting off contact with that man, she called me stupid. She told me I should have kept the child and demanded more money. I shook my head and said, "Whatever. I can't let an innocent life get involved in these dirty things." She was stunned for a moment, then pushed the door open and left. She grew up in a broken family, with an alcoholic and abusive father and a mother who cursed and beat her. Her stepbrother repeatedly tried to molest her and accused her of seducing him. It was very difficult for her to escape that family. So, when she had the opportunity to be a surrogate mother for an extremely high price, she agreed. After giving birth to her first child and lying in the hospital, she clutched the bedsheet, shedding tears, and told me, "I want to see the baby." I pried open her fingers, slipped an envelope with a bank card into her hand. The period when I moved closer to the school was the happiest time of my life. Every day, Trang Cam would message me on WeChat, making up clumsy excuses to invite me out. Amusement parks, movies, escape rooms. The most ridiculous time was right below the dormitory. My roommate yelled loudly that there was a fire and told me to run. I threw on a jacket and went outside, only to see candles and balloons laid out all over the road. He held a ridiculously tacky bouquet of roses, so tacky that I couldn't help but blush. "Be my girlfriend." His face was reflected in the candlelight and flowers. His clear eyes filled with tension and anticipation. Said yes. But looking back, perhaps I shouldn't have been so greedy then. Later I went to many places with him. But what I liked most was still sitting on the basketball court watching him play. When I said it, he would intentionally perform, throwing the ball, dribbling, exaggerated movements, then turn his head to the stands and smile broadly with his white, even teeth, full of vitality. The emotions of youth are always fervent and hard to hide, making one recall the first meeting. Although I knew I wasn't worthy of that light, I still couldn't help but be greedy again and again. That's why I refused to go home, changed my phone number, and cut off all contact with my family. Until he found me in the dormitory area behind the school. A week before graduation, Jessica called me. She came to Tianjin to visit my parents and was currently near the school. I went with her, and as soon as I arrived, I recognized my parents standing there. "Xiaojing." My mother's joy quickly turned into anger. "You're living so comfortably, even dating, and you don't care about your family." I was chilled to the bone. They knew about Trang Cam's existence. They had been there for a few days but hadn't looked for me. What exactly were they planning? I went to the hotel where they were staying. Seeing Chen Luan lying on the bed, feigning death, I expressionlessly watched my parents play their charade step by step. Chen Luan had caused trouble again, getting involved in debt. Interest compounded, and there was no way to pay it off. The creditors had come to demand payment. Parents see that kid's family is well off. You pretend to be pregnant and tell him to help your brother pay off the debt. I already broke up with him. No. Quickly apologize to him, otherwise. What will happen to your brother? What will happen? Just let it be. Chen Luan handed me his phone, and my mother forced me to find a way to resolve the pile of debts. I took the phone to check and found that they were involved in several gambling apps, which led to them being pulled into loan shark debt. Just as I was about to log out, QQ received a message. "Group 1, I can't live anymore. I've been suppressed for too long. I want to die." She put that in a group of anti-depression people. I asked and found out that this account was bought by Chen Luan, and it contained many game items specifically for playing. That group belonged to the previous owner. Chen Luan was too lazy to delete his friends in it. The account and password were saved in the notes. I didn't show any emotion, silently deleted the chat frame, returned the phone to him and said directly, "I broke up, but he will still help pay off the debt. I will go home with him to resolve this matter." They agreed and even gave my number to the creditor. I returned to the dormitory. I didn't sleep all night. I waited until dawn, making sure Chen Luan was asleep, before using my phone to log into that QQ account. I reread the group chat, finding the conversation from that time. "Why do you want to die?" He was still awake, almost immediately answering, "I can't live anymore." The college entrance exam results will be out in a few days. I did terribly. My parents will beat me to death. The original plan was vague, but it gradually became clear. Since he wanted to die anyway, it wouldn't be bad if I helped him. I chatted with him for a long time, from cutting wrists to jumping off a building, even helping him choose the time to commit suicide. This weekend, go to the rooftop behind the school. Your parents put so much pressure on you. It's all the teacher's fault. You have to teach him a lesson. My words were gentle, gradually luring him to his death. Then I pretended to carelessly reveal my home address. To manipulate others doesn't require much. You just need to be like me, someone with severe psychological defects. That's the easiest target to manipulate. Chen Luan would later receive a statement. But because it was an account he bought, he only knew to blame the seller and then tried to change the password. I bought a plane ticket, packed my luggage, got my graduation certificate. A week was enough for me to arrange everything. It's just that I didn't dare to face Trang Cam. So, I could only send him a breakup message, meet him at the airport and say goodbye, completely cutting off contact. After returning home, I used all my savings to pay off that debt but said nothing to my family. They were always anxious, while I was calm as if nothing had happened. Everything remained peaceful, until June 15th, when I read the news that the child had died. Strange people wearing baseball caps began to appear subtly around the residential area. Plainclothes police officers investigating usually wear hats to cover their faces to avoid retaliation and implicating their relatives. The police came to find me, so I staged the drama of running away due to debt and finding a rented house to hide in. I deliberately left no clear traces, but at the same time, I subtly created the impression that I was fleeing because I was afraid of the crime. There was one more thing. I deliberately had Chen Luan go out to find a tenant so that the house would be rented out. I knew he would be arrested sooner or later, but I didn't expect the child's parents to cause such a commotion, insisting that the school compensate them, preventing the police department from continuing the investigation. Chen Luan thus escaped for a while. I had originally intended to stay holed up in the rented house, waiting until Chen Luan was arrested. Unexpectedly, the landlord suddenly showed up, making him panic and almost scare him to death. He was afraid of being discovered by the creditors, so he dragged me to flee to a more distant place. Although I was worried that the police would find Chen Luan, I was temporarily relieved. I didn't expect him to come looking for me. Jessica ran to me in a pathetic state, reporting that Trang Cam was looking for me. That night, to escape harassment from her stepbrother, she casually latched onto a man, only to be pursued and almost killed by him. Fortunately, Trang Cam came to save her, and the matter even escalated to the police station. She told me to go see Trang Cam. I refused, asking her to persuade him to go home. She looked at me for a while and then said, "You're not worthy." She liked Trang Cam. I wasn't surprised by that. After all, people like me, buried in the mud, always crave light. I agreed to perform this play with Chen Luan and my parents, fleeing to Tongleong. But unexpectedly, Chen Luan was quickly arrested. Moreover, he was the one who came looking for me. As soon as Chen Luan entered the police station, my parents forced me to take the blame. The situation was very serious, but the police officer named Mark was too smart. He pretended to only arrest Chen Luan for investigation and even staged an interrogation. I knew he wanted me to confess everything to prevent Trang Cam from being hurt even more. If I had participated in the interrogation, he wouldn't have acted like that. He knew very well that only a truly foolish person would believe it all was real. He didn't arrest me immediately because the evidence was not complete. But I knew it was only a matter of time before I was arrested. When I sat in the taxi with Trang Cam, Mark stood outside, his deep gaze fixed on me. When Trang Cam hugged me at that moment, I became greedy. I thought I could cover up everything, return to Tianjin with him, and crawl out of that muddy swamp. But he was still looking at me, so I knocked him unconscious. I'd rather have him be deceived by me than see him look at me despairingly, his eyes full of disappointment. He wasn't like me. I knew that from the beginning. It's a pity that in the end it still turned out like this. Ultimately, it was because I was too greedy.